Hello, this is Paul Chek and welcome back to my video blog. Today we're going to talk about constipation and biological oscillators. For those of you that want to learn more about these things, I recommend my multimedia ebook, The Last 4 Doctors You'll Ever Need, How to Get Healthy Now. You can get that at chekinstitute.com or ppssuccess.com. Also, my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, available through chekinstitute.com or right on Amazon, has a tremendous amount of information, all sorts of information about zone exercises, and a lot of things highly relevant to our topic today. So I wanted to talk briefly about constipation. It's a very, very common problem. Some statistics I've read say 90 to 95% of the world population suffers constipation. I think 90% is probably a pretty safe assessment based on my observations. So with the concept of constipation, which can be very, very complicated, there's very, very comprehensive documents written on the issues of constipation that go all the way into neurological pathology, structural pathology, many, many things that are far, far too technical for this type of blog, but most of those things deal with a small percentage of the population. I would guess that probably 95% of the people that constitute the 90% of people that are constipated suffer from things that can be easily handled on their own by using a resource like my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, coupled with the ebook, The Last 4 Doctors You'll Ever Need. So today I'm going to just give you a brief overview of some of the things that you can pay attention to if you're suffering from constipation or any kind of digestive eliminative disorder in general. So to begin with, we're going to talk about biological oscillators. Biological oscillators are centers within the body that generate waves of energy and information. The key biological oscillators are the brain, the heart, and the intestines. And if you look at my diagram over here, you can see the Tai Chi symbol represented in each of these places: brain, heart, intestines. Now, when we're talking about the intestines here, we're talking about the small intestine, the large intestine, or everything that has peristalsis. In older medical terminology, that would be the entron, so everything from mouth to anus. Starting at the stomach, you have peristalsis. So the stomach, the small intestine, the large intestine, in my opinion, would all fit into the biological oscillator down here, which would relate to the solar plexus. So solar plexus, cardiac plexus, and then brain. Now, these centers all generate waves of energy and information, and when a person's body is healthy and balanced, there's a harmonic relationship between the energy frequencies, or the number of waves generated per minute, in each of these centers. So think of them as 3 musicians playing music together. When we're healthy, well balanced with rest, work, relationships, and our life is managed because we have a dream and we're paying attention to what we're creating instead of blaming it on other people and being a victim or a prostitute or a saboteur, then these things come into harmony. Key piece of information here: research by HeartMath, the HeartMath Institute in, I believe, Boulder, California, if I remember right. You can look at their book, HeartMath, showed that the heart field, the energy field generated by the heart, is 5,000 times stronger than the brain, and the brain is significantly stronger in its field generation than the intestinal tract. So once again, we return back to the mighty heart in my 4-step system that I teach all Chek practitioners. 1, what is your chief love? 2, what needs to be balanced? 3, what choices need to be made? 4 doctors: diet, quiet, movement, and happiness. These things are all issues of the heart. When we're doing what we love to do, we're on track, we're on purpose, and we're participating in the management and direction of our own lives. If you're doing it correctly, based on your one love, that means your heart is the guiding influence, and therefore you're acting as a labor of love. Anything else, such as doing what you think you've got to do to make a living, or doing whatever story you keep telling yourself, is often very stressful and leads to a life of wanting, wishing, And as they would say, if beggars were horses, excuse me, if wishes were horses, beggars would ride. Meaning, if you don't do anything, then you walk around wishing and wishing and wishing and wishing. And if those horses could be ridden, then every beggar would be on one. So we have to go into the action phase. Remember, whenever you're creating your dream, you have to follow the ABCs, which go backwards. First, you must have clarity in your dream. B is belief in your dream. And A is action. You must take action. So in my opinion, before we even really get into constipation, most of the issues around constipation or digestive eliminative disorders have to do with not living a person's dream and people keep telling themselves stories about how busy they are, what they've got to do, and act out their unconscious programs, which leads to a lot of inner stress that leads to digestive eliminative disorders at large. Okay, so again, we have the brain, the heart, and the intestinal tract. Here you can see that the intestinal tract gives a wave of peristalsis about every 10 seconds, or about 6 to 10 times a minute. The heart-lung system I've got related to the lung for breathing. If you're in balance and you're healthy, though the standard physiological literature says 12 to 18 is considered normal breaths per minute, my observation is that's normal based on, shall we say, statistics of unhealthy people. Having tested countless numbers of breathing rates, I can tell you most healthy people in a relaxed state fall between 6 and 10, which based on the research on the body and the harmony of energy centers, that would be logical. And then we come up to the brain here and we find out that when we're in alpha state, 8 to 14 hertz, we're right in that zone. And this is what I call dreaming awake. This is where we do our best learning. This is where our mind is relaxed, open, and receptive. Music that supports that, by the way, is one form of music that supports that learning is Baroque music. So from the Baroque time period, classical music built on a 1 beat per second structure. And any music that does not have a beat to it. Things that you can't really, things that flow, essentially. So relaxing, flowing music. So when we're balanced and we're working well, the brain is in an open child mind state, dreamlike, dreaming awake, meditative. We are breathing a normal, relaxed 6 to 10 full belly breaths a minute. And there's a wave of peristalsis about every 10 seconds or 6 to 10 times a minute, depending on where you're at in each person. So when those centers are imbalanced, we're like as an analogy, we're like a well-tuned engine. We're like a car that runs so smoothly you don't even know it's on. Okay? So later I'll get into some of these relationships and how it relates to constipation. So again, the heart field is 5,000 times stronger than the brain. What this means, by the way, is that the heart is actually the chief director of your feelings, your thoughts, and how you integrate. Your brain is the executor, as I'll show. But whether you're feeling stressed or not has everything to do with how you're feeling. Am I loving, or do I feel like I'm not loving? Am I being loved, or do I feel like I'm not being loved? To the degree that you feel like you're not being loved or not being loving, chances are very good you're going to be in a stress-generating state, which is, as I'll show you, the #1 cause of constipation in my observation. So we can balance the biological oscillators through the use of zone exercises, or what I call work-in exercises. And what we do there is we time breathing and movement, and we use what is sometimes referred to in Buddhism as a pure thought, which is a thought without any specific objective or end means. In other words, if you think, oh my God, I got to remember to shut the hose off on the tree, or I got to make sure I get the groceries tonight, those are all thoughts with an end means. Those are usually thoughts that have the likelihood of stressing you. But if we use a pure thought, then we use a thought like, I breathe love into myself, I breathe love to the world. I breathe love into myself. I breathe love to the world. Or I am the sun. I am the earth. I am the moon. I am the sky. Those are not typically stressful thoughts that have any kind of verb in there or action item. It's more of an experience. It's like dreaming awake. So in order to harmonize biological oscillators, I'll give you an exercise right out of How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. Zone 1, the breathing squat. Anybody can do it. If you're stuck in a wheelchair, just move what you can move. If you can only move your eyeballs, you can do it. So the key thing here is participation. In order to get over constipation or get healthy from anything, the first thing you've got to do is be willing to participate. Thinking about it is often not really doing much, because most of the people that are thinking about the things that are wrong with them are actually procrastinating as opposed to participating. The body has been talking to all of us for a long time. So by the time you're sick or you got a disease, it means you have a seriously, shall we say, bad case of not having a relationship with your body, and you think it's a rent-a-car that you can take somewhere, someone else will fix it up for you when you beat it up. It's not how it works. A breathing squat. Relaxed stance. If you can't stand, you can do whatever part of this you can do from any position, you can do it. We're going to couple movement with breathing, so we're going to raise our arms up as we breathe in, making sure that your belly is expanding for the first 2/3 of the breath before the chest moves. And then let the air out, always trying to breathe in through your nose, out through your nose and or mouth. Now your heart rate should not speed up. Your breathing rate should not speed up. Your tongue should not dry out. And you should be comfortable doing these on a full stomach. Inhaling. Filling the belly. Exhaling. Now if you want to go all the way into the squat, you can, but just remember the depth of the squat and the speed of the squat will determine how quickly your autonomic nervous system switches sympathetic and speeds everything up, which can quickly knock you out of the range. So what you can do is, as you're exhaling and dropping down, if you notice that the depth of the squat is creating too much effort and your breathing is speeding up or your heart rate's speeding up or your tongue starts to dry out, then just shorten the depth of the squat. Just adjust the pace of the squat to match your breathing. You shouldn't be breathing out, end of breath, and still moving, or breathing in, end of breath, and still moving. There should be perfect harmony. So now if we take that concept and we couple it with a pure thought, as I'm breathing in, I am breathing love. I breathe love into myself from the universe. I breathe love out of myself to the world, if you like. I breathe love into myself. I breathe love out to the world. I breathe love into myself. I breathe love out to the world. Now, it only takes a few minutes of that. As little as 1 minute can make a big difference. And the first minute is a minute more than you were doing before you started. Remember, the best exercise in the world is the one you're willing to do each day. So, ideally, I like people to practice for a minimum of 10 minutes with zone exercises or working exercises, or you're not likely to get nearly the therapeutic benefit that you would otherwise. Now, if all you can do is 10 reps and you do it every hour, that's fantastic. One of the most important things about any kind of healing is the intention to heal. As long as you have the intention to heal, then your soul knows you're participating in your own healing, and that is how you direct your ego to create what you want instead of what you don't want. So with that in mind, now that we're all balanced up, let's see what else we can talk about with regard to constipation. Now, constipation is an inability to fully eliminate your bowel movement. So if you poop, it does not matter how much you poop. You can poop a mountain of poop in that thing and flush it twice. But if you still feel like you wish you could poop more and you got stuff in there, you're technically constipated. So many people get confused because they don't realize that just because there's poop in the toilet that they can still be constipated. Most people think constipation means I'm not pooping. Now, ideally, we should move about 12 inches of feces. So if you get a ruler, if you were to add up your poops, you should, on average, get at least 12 inches of poops in a day. Now, that's going to be a mid-range for human beings. So you got, little people and kids all the way to great big rugby players and football players. And somewhere in between, you got a scale like that. I'm sure maybe you've seen a bear's poop in the woods. It's big, okay? So we want to look into the toilet. In my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, I give you a very nice description of the poopy policeman where I show what all the different poops look like. I'm not sure what page it's on right now. But in there I show you all the different common types of poops. I show you how to read your poop so you know exactly what you're looking for as far as what's going on in your diet and potentially in your lifestyle. So learning to look at your poops is very, very important. There's a beautiful little chart I made up in there and had my artist create for me, and people love it. A lot of people put it right up in the bathroom so their kids can see it because their kids seem to be very interested in their poops, and once they learn how to read their poops, they start playing with their diet, which I think is fantastic. So you've got 12 to 30 inches of feces a day, and you should have a complete sense of elimination. If you don't have 12 to 30 inches of feces a day and a complete sense of elimination, then you're constipated. Ideally, people like Bernard Jensen, you could read Dr. Jensen's Guide to Better Bowel Care, for example, suggests that we should have a bowel movement within about 30 minutes of each of the major meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That's fairly normal for a lot of people, depending on whether I'm traveling or not. Usually my body does behave that way if I'm well rested. Your rhythms will change directly related to the black box up there, but you should be getting 12 inches or 30 centimeters a day, no matter what your environment is. If you're a stressed out executive, housewife, fighter jet pilot, football player, OSHO or otherwise, he doesn't get any today because he's dead. But the point being is, no matter who you are, you should fall into that spectrum, and by paying attention to these things, you learn what is the environmental effects of your work environment, your home environment, and your mental, emotional environment on your body. So interacting with your body and getting to know your body and have a relationship with it is the most essential thing anyone can do to heal from any ailment. Okay? So when we look over here, what we'll see is that feces is actually made of 70% water and about 30% broken down or undigestible foodstuffs, which I would call earth. The earth element means those things earthly or solid, low vibration. If you look at the chakra system, earth would be do, vibration, water, re, fire, mi. So do, re, mi, fa, so, la, ti. So there's your range of vibration that the elements fall into as a classical theme. So the elements are not really just indicating earth, i.e. dirt and rock, or water as water, or fire as fire. They're indicating ranges or vibrational frequencies, just like we talked about up here. For example, in beta, you're at 14 to 30 hertz, which means your brain is making waves that are much faster than your organs can keep up with, so it's potentially going to cause you to shut down on the inside to support the process of doing things on the outside. So the waves here, or energy waves, are all just a collection of the frequencies like the rainbow that we exist within. The earth element relates to the large intestine, and what's in it? Dirt, soil, compost. So it's very earthy in there. If you have too much earth element and not enough water, you will get constipated. So for example, someone who's eating too much meat, that's a very quick way to get constipated. Eat too much meat. Another way to get constipated is eat too much fiber. Too much fiber for your body to digest. You'll usually know you're doing that because you get a lot of gas from it, typically. Okay? Water is very, very important. If we don't have adequate hydration, bang, we're going to get constipated. One of the first things your body does when it's low on water is it stops pooping and it squeezes the fluids out of your feces and recirculates it back into the body to help protect blood levels and all sorts of neat things like that. So if you're having a hard time drinking water, just remember that if you're not drinking enough water, you're drinking the water out of your poop to survive. So maybe that'll motivate you. Fire relates to metabolism in the body, and the solar plexus is what's presented here. Solar means sun plexus. Everything you eat was once sunlight. Air relates to breathing and circulation and the heart channel. And air is related and rises up into thought. So up here we have the executor, the ego, thoughts, words, and deeds. Above air is space and space relationships. So if we're breathing too little or too much, that can constipate us. If we're overly stimulated due to stimulants such as coffee, tea, sugar, anything that winds the fire element up in the body, mental, emotional stress, the fire will dry out the water and leave you with excess earth. If you have too much water for any reason, then you will have the opposite of constipation. You get diarrhea. If you don't have enough earth, you can still get diarrhea. So the mix of these elements is very important, but here space is especially important with the perspective of relationships. For example, if a person's living in a house where a guest comes over and overstays their welcome, the women are usually more sensitive to these relationships. It can be very, very stressful on people in a house to have to wait to go to the toilet, to not be able to walk around naked because there's a guest in the house. If you work in an office that's too small and you can't move, or you're like me and you lived on the road for over 20 years in hotel rooms that were tiny and you couldn't really ever get a sense of home or room to breathe and move. All of these relationships, which in your environment is called feng shui, by the way, the science of adjusting spatial relationships for optimal energy flow in your environment is feng shui. So what we're talking about here is inner feng shui, which is what my 4 Doctors book is about and my Eat, Move, and Be Healthy about, is balancing your inner energies. So we have to look at the earth element, the solids, the water element, liquids, the fire element. Not only what are we doing to maintain optimal metabolism, such as exercise, breathing, movement, how are we thinking? If you're thinking a bunch of negative thoughts, that winds up the fire element. What are we drinking, such as sugar water, soda pop, alcohol, etc.? Alcohol is coffee, tea. Alcohol is very stressful because it disrupts blood sugar balance and can disrupt the fire element. Are we breathing effectively, and are we creating the relationships in us and around us that are conducive to living our dream? So those are the issues. Now, remember the metaphysical saying, as above, so below. The executor, or the ego, is what's responsible for thoughts, words, and deeds at the conscious level. Then there's all sorts of unconscious stuff that gets involved, which is more complex than I care to go into in this short period. But the ego really makes a decision. Am I going to work in? Am I going to balance the elements? Am I going to eat right, etc.? So the ego is the executor that makes the choice of what happens with these elemental relationships. How these centers respond is largely determined by the choices made up here, which is why I teach the 1, 2, 3 format in Holistic Lifestyle Coaching Level 1 and beyond, and even Chek Exercise Coach, because it's so critical. There's no sense designing an exercise program for someone if they don't have a solid reason for doing it, or don't know why they're doing it, or don't know what their motivation is, because usually it won't last very long, or they're going to do it wrong. Okay? Now, common causes of constipation. Number 1 cause is stress. In my opinion, the number one cause of stress, you see my little cross here, which represents the 4 directions, is not knowing where your own north is. What is your dream? What are you accomplishing at this time in your life? What are you organizing your energy around? What's worth living for enough to manage yourself intelligently? If you don't know what direction you're going and you're a parent, then I have news for you. According to research by Dan Siegel and others, you're probably most likely to be stressful to your kids, because one of the most stressful things for children is parents that don't have a sense of direction in life. So stress underlined in blue means mental stress. Underlined in red means physiological stress and meeting your basic survival needs. Am I safe? Do I have real food to eat and enough of it? And can I procreate when my issues of safety and security and food are adequately met? Okay. Next common cause of constipation is an improper ratio. You see my little symbol eyes to no eyes. Pretty much all things that are plant-based or carbohydrate-based don't have eyeballs. Most of your protein and fat sources have eyeballs. So I call it balancing the eyeballs to no eyeballs ratio. Each person's individual. I go into that quite deeply in How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy and Eating the Chek Way, I believe it is, or Primal Pattern Eating, which are recordings available through ChekInstitute.com. But if this ratio is off, you're either going to be too loose in the stool or you're going to be constipated. Water, we need to drink half our body weight in ounces of water a day. I go into ideal mineral ratios and hardness factors and things that are important for you to know in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. But water is absolutely critical. If you're dehydrated, you're going to be constipated forever. Okay? Next, medical drug side effects. Huge number of medical drugs produce constipation as a side effect. I've seen it more times than I can count in my assessment of the drugs my clients are taking or my patients are taking. So always, if you're constipated, always look at the side effects of the drugs you're on. Food chemicals, very big problem. If you look at this book, A Consumer's Dictionary for Food Additives, you'll find something out very interesting. Having looked up piles and piles of chemicals in here, trying to help people with health problems, looking at why they have these various symptoms, and then looking up, once I know what's in their diet log, such as if they're eating a such and such a bar or such and such a drink, like say 5-Hour Energy or even coffee or cupcake, and I find out it's got various spices or herbs or additives in it. You look them up in here and lo and behold, guess what you find? Probably somewhere between 30 and 40% of all the additives put in food have a side effect listed as gastrointestinal inflammatory, which means they cause inflammation in your guts, which will usually trigger constipation. It'll disrupt peristalsis and cause lots of trouble. This book, The Safe Shopper's Bible by David Steinman and Daniel Epstein, MD, is a very, very good book because it gives you a lot of information about what's in food and what better choices you have. Highly recommend that book if you're constipated or otherwise. Okay. Next, we have to balance movement and breathing. If you're getting too much movement or too little movement, both of them can cause trouble. Too little, you don't get enough movement and pumping. You have biological pumps as well. You've got a pelvic floor, your diaphragm, and your heart are your biological pump, and your abdominal wall. Pelvic floor, diaphragm, abdominal wall, those are your chief biological pumps. Your biological pumps work with your biological oscillators. So if you're not getting enough physical movement, you won't be breathing enough, so your diaphragm won't pump well. Your abdominal wall won't be active, so you won't be pumping that way. And if the abdominal wall is not active, the pelvic floor is not effectively active. So you'll see that biological pumps and biological oscillators work hand in hand with each other. So if a person's over-exercising, they'll wind themselves up, too much stress hormones, too much cortisol, too much sympathetic activity, pushes the blood out of the organs into the periphery, slows down the digestive eliminative process significantly. too little exercise, not enough pumping, then everything stagnates and you just start to rot inside and make yourself highly susceptible to fungal and parasite infections. Okay, so too much or too little movement is not helpful. Ideally, we need about 30 minutes of movement a day on average. That doesn't mean it has to be stressful. Just walking is a fantastic exercise. Participating in your own life for 30 minutes a day to give yourself what you need. So overdoing it, undoing it, both can cause constipation. If you're not moving enough, you're also probably not breathing very well. Exercise encourages deep breathing. Sedentary living does not. Also remember that your breathing and your thinking mirror each other. I'm sure some of you have had the experience of being in a movie theater or watching a movie at home on television, and all of a sudden felt your heart racing and you're either holding your breath or you're hyperventilating, and you realize, wow, you're falling right into that movie full on. It's got you. And then you have to adjust yourself. Oh, okay. Well, all you did was change your mind. All you did was, oh, it's a movie I'm watching. It's not real. Oh, thank God. It's like believing a dream. You know, you get in there and you can get lost in it. So the point being is your thinking will dictate your breathing, which is why we want to use a pure thought, and we want to go into relaxed, harmonious movement and get that brain into the alpha range of 8 to 14 hertz, which falls into the working range of the other two biological oscillators. Okay? So our resources, again, were How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, right here, and my book, The Last 4 Doctors You'll Ever Need. Somewhere in here, there's a nice picture of the poopy policeman. I didn't think to get that prepped up in front, but I'm sure that when you get in there and find it, you'll probably get a good chuckle out of it. I think I got it here. Oh, we're getting close. Let me see. Poops. Well, and there it is. Okay. Coming up. Here you go. I'll just bring that up a little closer for you so you can see the poopies. And the poopy policeman is the gold standard right there. So then I explain what each of those poops mean and what kind of adjustments to make in your diet and lifestyle so you don't have to be constipated. Remember, if you're constipated down here, you're probably backed up here. If you're backed up here, you're probably constipated down here as well. So that, and one other tip, eating too much food. I didn't put that on the list, but eating too much food can cause a lot of trouble. Because if you can't digest and eliminate the food, it starts getting backed up in the system. So if you're eating more than you can effectively digest, metabolize, assimilate, and eliminate, then you're going to get constipated. So even if you've got a stress-free life and you're living in balance with your 4 doctors, if you're overeating, you're probably going to get constipated. Those are my tips on constipation. Those are my suggestions. I gave you a simple little breathing and movement exercise from Zone 1 in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, called a breathing squat, which I add a little arm movement to. Remember, you can do it. If all you can do is move your arms, you can do it. Just wiggle your finger, you can do it. Inhale with your eyes. Exhale. Anyone can do it. First, you got to be willing to participate. Thanks for joining me today. I'll come back next week with something new and exciting, I hope. I'll talk to you then. Thanks for joining me.